Hundreds of people left stranded in Russia after an Air India plane bound for San Francisco is forced to make an emergency landing in a remote part of that country.
I would rather land anywhere but Russia or North Korea or something like that. So I'm sure U.S. citizens on that flight must be very concerned.
Concern at SFO tonight for more than 200 passengers, including American citizens, have spent an entire night in a remote part of Siberia. Good evening, everyone. I'm Heather Holmes.
And I'm Mike Meeback. Those passengers are now waiting for a rescue plane to bring them to the United States. The Air India flight was headed from New Delhi to San Francisco when it had to make that emergency landing in eastern Russia. KTVU's Jana Katsuyama live tonight out at SFO with the story. Jana?
Mike and Heather, Air India says that the reason for them landing was because of a problem with the engine. And some Bay Area residents and other residents in California say they were very concerned because they have relatives who are on that flight. The Air India Flight 173 was heading from Delhi to San Francisco International Airport when the airline said there was a problem with one of its engines. The flight, carrying 216 passengers and 16 crew members, was diverted and ended up having to make an emergency landing at the Magadan Airport in Russia. On social media, some Bay Area residents said they have relatives on board and reposted videos which they say show crowded areas with mattresses on the ground where passengers were sent to sleep. The landing was in a very remote city, according to Steve Fish, professor of political science at UC Berkeley.
It's Magadan, which is a very far-flung, extremely cold city on Russia's east coast. Not very many people live there, and it's used mostly just for exploration, Arctic exploration, military purposes, and so on.
At SFO Tuesday, passengers who lined up at the Air India counters for outbound flights said the situation sounded stressful. The State Department confirmed there were American citizens on board, a concern given the high political tension between the U.S. and Russia.
I'm a U.S. citizen, so with a U.S. passport, landing in Russia would not be my first choice to land. I would rather land anywhere but Russia or North Korea or something like that. So I'm sure U.S. citizens on that flight must be very concerned.
There's some problem with engine and, it would be just so stressful to know that you are on that flight and what can happen, and also like landing in Russia.
Professor Fish says Russia's conflict with the U.S. has resulted in bans on airspace.
Russia is not even allowing travel over its airspace from Western countries. India is one country that actually still does so. There's, in fact, some dispute with the Western powers over whether it should actually be doing that.
And Fish says President Vladimir Putin must tread carefully in how the Air India passengers are treated.
He's concerned with his relations with Narendra Modi's government. That's the Prime Minister of India, Modi, who has maintained disgraceful neutrality in Russia's attack on Ukraine, but has also, in part for that reason, maintained pretty good relations with Putin.
The engine issue is probably more concerning. And I know the Air India fleet is pretty old and the plan is to revamp it, so I'm looking forward to that happening in the next couple of years.
Air India is aware and trying to address that passengers' concerns about the aging fleet, with an order for more than 400 jets from Boeing and Airbus expected in the coming years. Now, as for the plane that is in Russia right now, they are not going to use that. They're planning reportedly to bring in another plane to board those passengers and then bring them finally back here to SFO, to the destination. But certainly some tense moments, Mike, for those passengers as well as people here.
Yeah, hopefully safe travels home the second time around. Jana Katsuyama live tonight there at SFO. Jana, thank you. Now to the